venture into the realm of stories in stone, and embark on a mesmerizing journey through ancient Egypt. Together, we will unravel the enigmas whispered by the venerable stones. For 4.5 millennia, the Great Pyramid of Giza has beckoned tomb raiders and intrepid explorers. Its sheer grandeur and immense scale ignite the imagination, conjuring visions of hidden treasures and untold marvels waiting within. The common misconception suggests that the colossal size of Old Kingdom pyramids made them easy targets for tomb robbers. In reality, every tomb, regardless of its size, from modest mastabas to grand pyramids, was a potential target. Secrecy played little to no role in the security of tombs during the Old Kingdom era. The uniformity of pyramid entrances, typically located on the northern side, reinforces this point. Despite the relative accessibility of these entrances, robbers tunneled through almost 40 meters of masonry in the Great Pyramid. The infamous Robbers' Tunnel presents a puzzling anomaly within the Great Pyramid. It bypasses the imposing granite plugs that obstruct the ascending passage to the king's chamber, leading one to question the robbers' motives. If they possess such intimate knowledge of the pyramid's inner workings, why undertake the arduous task of tunneling when easier routes existed? This account delves into the intricacies of the Robbers' Tunnel, seeking evidence to illuminate its creation and ultimately unravel the mystery of how the Great Pyramid was plundered. First, we must explore the potential approaches of the would-be looters, laying the groundwork for our investigation into the tunnel's secrets. Unlocking the construction secrets embedded within the pyramid's stone masonry is a formidable task. Deciphering the chaotic work of ancient intruders presents an even greater challenge. The creation of the infamous Robbers' Tunnel is often attributed to Caliph Al-Mamun, who is said to have breached the Great Pyramid in the year 832 AD. This attribution stems from the fact that accounts of Al-Mamun's visit to the pyramid provide the earliest documented mention of the tunnel's existence, with the Caliph himself claiming responsibility for its creation. However, numerous reasons exist to doubt this narrative, particularly when scrutinizing the specifics of Al-Mamun's supposed exploration of the pyramid and the method by which he allegedly discovered the tunnel's path. The most widely circulated version suggests that, unable to locate the original entrance, Al-Mamun opted to excavate directly into the pyramid from a random point. Having breached over 30 meters into the masonry, a worker inadvertently dislodged a prismatic stone beneath the granite plugs. The sound of the falling stone led the excavators eastward, toward the plugs, resulting in the serendipitous discovery of an ascending passageway. The entire sequence of events seems improbable. Furthermore, it seems illogical that Al-Mamun, supposedly unable to locate the pyramid's entrance, would choose to tunnel directly into it. Most pyramids at Giza feature chambers carved directly into the bedrock. To infiltrate the Great Pyramid, even a cursory survey of the land would suggest tunneling downwards, towards its base, rather than assaulting the structure itself. The infamous Robbers' Tunnel in the Pyramid of Khafre exemplifies this approach. The Caliph Al-Mamun's Egyptian expedition in the year 832 was primarily aimed at suppressing the Coptic revolt, known as the Bashmuric Revolt. According to the geographer Al-Yaqubi, the journey spanned from the 16th of February to the 3rd of April. This timeline indicates that Al-Mamun had only 47 days to both quell a fierce uprising and excavate nearly 40 meters into the depths of the Great Pyramid. It seems almost impossible to imagine such a swift downfall. More plausibly, the Great Pyramid suffered its first violation millennia prior, during the First Intermediate Period. This era, marking the decline of Egypt's Old Kingdom, saw the central authority crumble, approximately 4 centuries after Khufu's reign. Even if the pyramid fell victim to looters towards the end of the 4th dynasty, when pharaohs began to shift their focus away from the Giza Plateau, it would still have occurred beyond the living memory of those who erected it. These pyramids were intended to be eternal, guarded perpetually within vast enclosures and temples, where priests maintained the cults honoring the departed kings. Only after the abandonment of the pyramid could a tunnel be dug from the side. Envision 2 groups of tomb raiders. The first raider, Group 0, lacks any knowledge of the pyramid's internal structure. The second, Group 1, possesses precise knowledge of the chambers and corridors. It's unlikely Group 0 would haphazardly tunnel into the Great Pyramid, as in the Al-Mamun legend. They would exhaust all efforts to locate the original entrance. Even if concealed by a Tura limestone casing block, a massive lintel would have been above the entrance, providing structural support akin to all pyramids of the Old Kingdom. Following the era of the Great Pyramid, the entrances to Old Kingdom pyramids were consistently positioned at ground level, invariably centered on the northern face. This strategic placement presented a relatively small search area for anyone with even a rudimentary understanding of pyramid design. Consequently, it is almost certain that Group 0 would have successfully located the original entrance to the Khufu Pyramid. Group 1 would have faced even fewer obstacles in finding the primary entry point, making it their immediate focus. The debate continues, however, regarding the presence of large stone blockages within the descending corridors of these ancient structures. Within the ancient mysteries of Egypt's pyramids lies a curious detail: the blocked entrances. While minor entry points in the Pyramid of Khafra and the Bent Pyramid were indeed sealed, their modern rediscovery suggests they weren't intended for regular use post-construction. To judge them by the same standards as the main passages would be misleading. Flinders Petrie, a pioneering figure in Egyptology, was among the first to address this phenomenon. In his 1883 book, The Pyramids and Temples of Gizeh, he noted a popular theory suggesting that all pyramid passages were blocked after the pharaoh's burial. However, Petrie argued that there was little evidence to support this widespread belief. He observed a lack of continuous blocking mechanisms within the pyramid corridors. Instead, he proposed that the sealing of certain passage mouths was merely a means to conceal their existence, rather than a permanent and impenetrable barrier. Conversely, scattered evidence suggests that no universal blocking system was ever implemented or removed within the pyramids. This is particularly significant given the descending corridors, seemingly designed for blocking stones. Although these corridors lack obvious signs of extensive blockage, their undamaged walls suggest either poor workmanship or a subtle removal method that left no trace. In contrast, instances where blocking stones were indeed used often display noticeable damage to the surrounding stonework. Returning to the two groups of tomb robbers, Group 0 likely made their way down the corridor without significant trouble, or perhaps encountering only minor, easily overcome obstacles. Group 1, however, armed with certain knowledge, faced a decision. If the downward passage proved impassable, and they possessed knowledge of the granite plugs in the ascending corridor, they could have used the pyramid's entrance as a guide to create a robber's tunnel. This tunnel would bypass the external defenses altogether. We see similar examples in other Old Kingdom tombs, like the massive Mastaba No. 17, where lengthy robbers' tunnels provide the most direct route to the burial chamber. While I acknowledge this as a possibility for the Great Pyramid, I consider it an unlikely scenario. Tunneling through the rough stone masonry of a pyramid is nothing like digging into earth to reach an underground chamber. A constant dread of being buried alive under tons of rubble would haunt anyone daring enough to undertake such a task. Even the knowledgeable Group 1 would have had serious doubts. From our present-day perspective, the robber's tunnel appears relatively safe, largely due to the extensive use of mortar binding the Great Pyramid's massive blocks. However, the Great Pyramid was the last pyramid constructed in this way. From the time of Khafra's pyramid onward, mortar usage in construction dwindled, eventually vanishing entirely. The robber's tunnel within Khafra's pyramid had collapsed in antiquity, defying repeated attempts at reconstruction by 19th and 20th century explorers. This suggests a significant deterrent for potential looters, the fear of a tunnel collapse. Based on the construction techniques of later pyramids, they wouldn't have anticipated the internal structures being robust enough to withstand extensive digging. The most plausible scenario involves two separate groups of robbers descending the initial passage, regardless of any blockages they encountered. These groups then discovered the granite plugs obstructing the ascending corridor, the shaft, and the unfinished subterranean chamber. Anyone contemplating scaling a nearly 60-meter shaft would undoubtedly hesitate to excavate upwards. The oxygen is scarce, visibility poor, and there's no clear direction to begin the dig. Both groups, the initial one and the subsequent one, would have focused on the granite plugs. And it's here that we can confidently dismiss a hypothetical Group 0 as the initial intruders. The simple fact is, in the 4.5 millennia since the Great Pyramid's construction, no one had bothered to seriously examine the granite plugs from below. The lower granite surface remained undisturbed, and the surrounding limestone bore no marks of probing. Had tomb raiders been ignorant of the ascending passage's construction, surely they would have explored the limestone north of the plugs, seeking to gauge the obstacle's size. Unaware that 5 meters and 15 tons of granite lay in wait, circumventing the granite directly would seem the obvious approach. At the very least, a direct inspection of the barrier's magnitude would be warranted, for if it were small, unblocking the ascending passage would be the most straightforward path. Yet throughout the Great Pyramid's history, no such examination has ever occurred, leading to one plausible conclusion. The initial intruders knew precisely how much granite stood in their way. Instead of directly assaulting the granite barrier, the tomb robbers descended 3 meters further down the descending passage. Here they began excavating upwards through the western wall. This offered a clever shortcut, a direct, linear route to the ascending passage, bypassing the granite plugs altogether. Unlike a traditional mine shaft, the descending corridor provided ample light and air. The excavated debris could be conveniently disposed of down the corridor, ensuring the escape route remained clear. However, after nearly 4 meters of vertical digging, they emerged slightly short of their target, clearing the southern edge of the granite plugs. The damage to the rear of the innermost blocking stone suggested a calculated precision. The robbers were determined to tunnel no further than absolutely necessary. The modern stairway and spacious path that marked the beginning of this ancient tunnel are later additions, crafted to ease the journey for visitors. The original tunnels, carved by ancient looters, were barely wide enough for a single person to squeeze through. Once you reach the ascending passage, the route to the king's chamber becomes undeniably clear. At the summit of the Grand Gallery, the entrance to the antechamber was almost certainly blocked. Evidence of this can be seen in the damage to the upper and right sides, revealing the method of forced entry. The final obstacle was the granite portcullis stones. The initial approach involved climbing over the first two and attacking the connection point where the top of the inner portcullis meets the corridor leading to the king's chamber. Now, with the Great Pyramid fully accessible, one can't help but wonder, what was the true purpose of the robbers' tunnel in the first place? The tunnel's existence defied logic, an elaborate excavation far exceeding the needs of simple access. I've always been captivated by the peculiar, elongated, and narrow forms of storage chambers found in royal tombs dating back to the late 4th and early 5th dynasties. Consider the spaces within Menkaur's pyramid, the tomb of Queen Kenkaus, the great mastaba of Shepseskaf, and the early 5th dynasty pyramid of Userkaf. All echo this distinctive, slender design. We see a striking example in Khufu's mother, Hetepheres, whose undisturbed burial chamber revealed gilded furnishings, including a beautifully restored chair and an extended bed frame. Presuming Khufu possessed treasures of similar grandeur, it's conceivable that removing them through the vertical access point near the granite plugs, without causing considerable damage to the stolen artifacts, would have proven an impossible feat. The robbers' fear dictated the narrowness of the vertical shaft. They were terrified of excavating even an inch more than absolutely necessary. Even the pyramid builders themselves rarely exceeded 105 centimeters in corridor width, and only then with robust ceiling supports. The loot stolen from Khufu's tomb had to undergo a series of tortuous maneuvers. A 90-degree turn westward past the granite plugs, followed by a steep 74-degree descent down the vertical shaft. At the shaft's base, another 90-degree turn eastward was required, succeeded by a further 74-degree adjustment to realign with the north-south axis. With corridors barely exceeding a meter in width, transporting lengthy and flexible objects would have proven an impossible feat. The only plausible method to create sufficient clearance lay in expanding the vertical shaft beyond the original dimensions of the pyramid's corridors. However, such a conspicuous alteration would have raised immediate suspicion among seasoned tomb raiders. Therefore, the construction of a robber's tunnel, intersecting the ascending passage at a subtle angle and extending directly outward from the pyramid, presents itself as a logical solution. The initial size of this tunnel might not have surpassed the corridor's width, thus facilitating the discreet removal of substantial funerary items. The robbers' confidence in their success must have been bolstered by experience excavating vertical shafts. While it's not a novel theory that a tunnel was constructed solely for removing artifacts from the pyramid, a crucial element remains to verify this claim. Evidence etched in stone holds the answer. It's improbable that the tunnel originated from the granite plugs outwards or from the outer casing stones inward. Access to both ends would have significantly expedited the digging process, suggesting a simultaneous excavation from opposite sides. The task ahead promised to be painstaking, with space for only one digger to work at a time. Attacking from both flanks, however, would effectively double their speed. Now came the critical question: what were they actually searching for? First, one had to visualize the robbers' tunnel in its original form. Venetian traveler Prospero Alpini noted in 1591 that the tunnel was far too low to stand upright in until it had been widened in 1584. There would be no point in needlessly excavating upwards, so one could safely assume the tunnel's ceiling represented its most authentic, untouched state. Scanning the roof, a single protruding block in the eastern section immediately caught my eye. He stood out from the others, effectively blocking the passage. Intriguingly, this anomaly was situated near the tunnel's midpoint. Upon closer inspection of the tunnel's path, I unearthed another detail. While it's known the robbers' tunnel veers east toward the blocking stones, it also makes a more subtle curve in the same direction, right at the point of an overhanging ceiling block. This location, roughly in the center of the tunnel, was likely the spot where the diggers from each side finally met. Driven by expediency, the perpetrators likely sought to complete their task with minimal exertion. Rather than confronting a massive final obstacle, they may have opted for an easier detour, aware that their goal was within reach. The tunnel's curve at this juncture bolsters the theory of two distinct excavations converging. Had the digging originated solely from one end, a change of course at this point would be illogical, especially with a substantial obstruction remaining in the intended direction. While a protruding ceiling stone and a subtle directional shift might not, on their own, constitute irrefutable proof, their convergence, coupled with a plausible explanation for their presence, weaves a more compelling narrative. Ultimately, when grappling with a 4,000-year-old enigma, one navigates through probabilities, piecing together the most likely scenario from fragmented clues. Even when a case seems hopeless, traces always remain. By dedicating time to meticulous examination and reconstructing the logical chain of events step by step, clues eventually gain significance. Only then does the ancient past become a little clearer, and the unbelievable tale of the pyramids comes to life in the present.